All right, guys, and let's see what we get for unemployment claims. If we get any potential volatility here. All right, and claims should be coming out. We see a little bit of weakness coming in on the dollar yen. Oh, never mind. There it goes. Dollar yen just popped a little bit. Euro dollar came down initially. So claims must have just come in. I'm going to assume that a little bit, well, let's just go look at the number. It's possible that we get some volatility from either one of these events. So the Philly Fed Manufacturing Index came at much better than expected in terms of U.S. economy stuff. Economic health, businesses react quickly. So we're seeing a really strong, wow, that's a significant difference. Dollar spiked initially. And there is the claims, came out pretty much as expected. So the spiker there was actually seemingly the Philly Fed Manufacturing Index. The manufacturing index pointed to some strength in the economy, whereas the unemployment claims here basically came out as expected. So we see dollar yen making a bit of a push higher. We see NAS pretty much flat. Gold spiked down, but is now trading flat. For those of you who are just tuning in, there's now 435 of you guys. We're now going to take a look at some setups. I don't trade the actual spike. I trade the aftermath of news. And so we're going to now take a look at some setups. I want to start, of course, following up on my current trade that I am in. We are currently short gold in the VIP group, and I'll show you guys this trade here. So I shorted gold at resistance yesterday, and this was just a picture perfect entry. The question, however, will be here today: is this is this going to continue, right? So I'm bearish on gold. I shorted it. It was the perfect entry. You could not pick a better entry than that, right? Price came right back up, perfectly rejected that resistance, and just came right back down. I want to point out, though, that not all of my trades are that good. I wish they were. But now we're really at the phase where it is not so much about the entry anymore. It's about managing this trade. So I mentioned earlier, I have trailed my stop loss, so I can't lose on this trade. But ideally, if I'm going to make some money here on gold, I would like to see this level of resistance continue to show that bearish strength. And if this does kind of break down here today, my goal is to tighten that stop loss even further into profit and make sure I don't miss out on some potential more volatility. So yeah, we're watching this gold chart pretty close. Chandler, I'm going to shoot you a message behind the scenes really quick. If you don't mind just helping me out with that. So yeah, gold's still looking strong here to the downside overall, but I do have a stop loss in place if necessary to kind of trail me out. So that's one thing. I found this interesting. The S&P 500, I got to use my watch list. The S&P 500,
did you know our market scanning software, the EDGEFINDER, just got even better? Check out our newest asset, Bitcoin. That's right, Bitcoin was our most requested feature update, and we're so excited to announce Bitcoin is finally here with plans to add even more crypto in the future. We've also updated our most popular feature, the Smart Money Tracker, adding even more data than before. The EDGEFINDER not only automatically scores 8 different metrics for each asset to give it an overall buy, sell, or neutral score, but it also keeps track of bank and analyst positioning, stores historical fundamental data, shows how assets are trending throughout the day, and so much more. Right now, our YouTube viewers can get the EDGEFINDER at a discounted price when they use promo code A1YT. You can check out the EDGEFINDER with the link down in the description below, and again, get it for the special discounted price when you use promo code A1YT at checkout.
Actually getting a slightly bearish reading on the EDGEFINDER right now, which I agree with. This thing is in a downward trend. Am I actually going to short the S&P 500? No. If I'm going to short the S&P 500 off the EDGEFINDER readings, what I'm going to wait for personally is I'm going to wait for a very strong sell reading, right? we're only getting a -3, which takes into account several factors. One thing that is pretty bearish about the indices right now, the overall COT data still looks pretty dang bearish, right? Look at the S&P 500. We can actually see that we have a 61.81% short ratio. So what we're looking at, this is institutional money, whether they are buying or selling particular markets, assets, so on and so forth. The S&P 500, in terms of the commitment of traders data, shows a huge bias to the sell side. So I find that really, really intriguing.
So it all depends on how this candle closes. If it prints like a huge wick, then I'm not gonna be that happy taking any trades. But if it closes with a nice clean close, so with a little wick, I'll be interested to buy EU. So AU, I would also be looking to buy as well. I do really like this pattern below. That's showing me a bit of a V reversal. And from my data, I know the V reversals usually can push the markets to the upside. So if I get a nice clean close here, I will look for a buy setup. And then the final one will be the pound for me. But to be honest, the pound just does not look good as of yet. So it has just broken this high and is currently retracing. So I'm going to be very careful with the pound, especially with it being heavily range bound in the past few, I would say even weeks, not days. For the Japanese pairs, kind of corrective, range bound. So I'm just being much more patient with the Japanese pairs. Only potential that I'm currently seeing is on EU and AU, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and again, those movements on the dollar right now are very interesting. It'll be interesting actually to see how they close. We've got about 20 minutes left in this hourly candle, and I know Marco that you pay close attention to those hourly bars. So it'll be very interesting to see while this candle plays out what ends up happening on a lot of these dollar crosses. Miko, what about you? You got any trades on or things that you're looking to execute on today?
Yeah, no trades for me so far this week. Been trying to stay patient, but nothing's really materialized. A few pairs that I'm looking at that do look good. I'm keeping my eye on pound CAD. I like some longs for this one, but I'm not too sure if I'll get a pullback now. I was keeping my eye on this particular level here at 1.713. I'm looking to see if we can make our way back to the highs here on the left, just above 1.73. So I'm looking at bias for pound CAD. I'm liking the high lows we're seeing now. So I'm looking to see if we can get a retest of some sort and then the continuation. So I'm keeping my eyes on pound CAD. I'm not sure if we'll see a pullback. I'm also looking a lot at the yen pairs. So dollar yen, I'm waiting for some retracement for this one. I've got a nice area of confluence, slightly further down around the 140 mark, I believe. No, 144. So around here, I'm looking at a pullback into, see if I can catch the next higher low. Swiss yen also looks good. Another similar setup. Again, probably not going to take all of these yen possible opportunities, but whichever looks good. Risk reward looks good. Entries look good as well. And I'm also keeping an eye on euro yen as well, looking for the retest of 157-ish on this particular area. So I'm looking to see if I can follow that trend with the yen pairs. Everything still looks pretty strong on the higher time frames, but I just need some good quality pullbacks for them. So those are at the top of the watch list at the moment.
Sure. So a couple yen crosses, a couple dollar crosses in there. What do you think about gold right now, Miko?
Gold, yeah, I've been quite bearish on gold. I've been personally looking to short it, but just haven't seen enough retracement for me. I saw you in a gold position there, so congrats on that. But I've been looking for a bigger pullback. There has been some nice kind of cute pullbacks on the lower time frames with hourly 30 minutes, so some nice short opportunities there in the lower time frames. But for me, I like my pullbacks on the 4H, I've been looking for a pullback all week, but it's kind of just been slowly dropping to the downside, so I haven't really had an opportunity for that. But gold looks like it's just taking out some lows here, so pretty significant prices at the moment. It might mean some retracement to the upside for gold, but in the grand scheme of things, I do think there's more downside. So I'm looking at personally, if we have that bigger retracement, a lower high somewhere, and I do think we can go and attack the lows again. So personally, I'm looking at 1850, 1860 potentially around here. So that's kind of where I can see gold going to based on the structure we've seen and the lower highs as well. But I'm waiting for a bit more retracement, and then I'll see what I can do maybe next week.
Yeah, and a couple of things to kind of follow you up on that with gold, Miko. You know, the quick high level fundamentals behind this move to the downside is, you know, there's been a lot of slowdown in China, which of course China is a major user of commodities, you know, for everything, right? Silver, gold, of course, the oil markets pay attention to what China is looking like. If they're slowing down, the demand for raw materials is also going to slow down. And so we've kind of had just a slew of tough market data out of China, which has been put pressure on you know, the metals market especially. But then also from a technical perspective, Miko, you've got this 1900 level. And you know, you pointed out that previously this level had held very well. 1900 has been a stubborn area for the bulls, right? They've pushed off this level several times before. They even pushed back on it very recently, and now we are kind of trading it and flirting with the idea of closing underneath it. But it's a little bit too soon to say. You pointed out too, Miko, that the hourly chart has been a lot more suitable, I think, for trading these pullbacks. This is really tough to look at on the 4-hour chart, but I've just been in here kind of shorting it on the lower time frames. I took 2 different shorts this week. Both of them worked out, but to be completely honest, they weren't huge profits for me because we haven't gotten kind of the breakaway follow through move that I was looking for. So, you know, this entry looks crisp. It looks perfect. But if this trade just goes a little higher, I'm only going to close out like a 1-to-1. So, I mean, still nothing to complain about, but just the frustrating side of trading. Sometimes you don't get those follow through moves that you're looking for.
And how did you pick?
Yeah.
Sorry, how did you pick the take profit on this trade? So how did you pick the level?
So I should clarify, I'm not actually using a take profit. I'm just using it to track my risk to reward on TradingView. So as I kind of usually do, I'm just trailing a stop. So I put my stop just above market structure here. So my stop is here, but then I don't have a target order. Instead, I'm just trailing a stop. So I've actually moved my stop loss to where this white line is. And, you know, I'm kind of just looking to see if this thing wants to keep rolling over. I'll just kind of try and keep trailing that stop. So that's where I say, you know, this is kind of the frustrating side of trailing stops, is this week has been a profitable week for me. But, you know, if I was using more of a partials type of trading like Miko, this would have been more suitable to that style. But we've had weeks where, you know, trailing stops are king, and then we've had weeks where partials are king. And that's why, you know, it's always good to keep up with you guys just to see where you're at. Marco, what about you? So we know super urgent setups here. This hourly candle we just talked about watching. Do you have any thoughts on gold? And I guess anything else that caught your eye today in markets? Is there anything else that you're watching other than what you shared with us?
So let me see for gold. Okay, so for gold, it's kind of corrective. Again, for me, not really works with my strategy. I'm seeing it kind of moving in this descending channel, but yeah, some pairs can move like this for ages, and that's kind of how they trend, very correctively. But for me personally, yeah, I'm not seeing any big momentum legs anywhere here. These major lows are being broken with only wicks. So maybe, okay, this was a momentum leg, but then the rest of them, okay, this one as well. But the spaces between the momentum legs just ranges. So that's sort of price action I do not want to see as a trend trader. What I would like to see is something like this move. This one as well, this one, this leg. So that's what I want to see, and currently I'm just not seeing that sort of a move. For the other pairs, to be honest, for me, I'm looking only at my 6 pairs, but I'm very interested about this current candle because I saw most of my trades come after a news candle. So either a couple of hours after, or the same week, or again, it's very close after a news candle that I get a nice winning trade. And it all depends on how the news candle forms and what happens after it. So I noticed if we get a news candle, which I can identify by it being very large or having huge wicks, and if the trend continues almost immediately, I tend to get a nice winner somewhere in this move. But if there is a news candle and then we range for a long time, any sort of a push that happens usually fails and retraces back into the range. So for me, it's now a waiting game, waiting for the hourly close and then waiting for the next few candles to either continue or range around. And I also had a question. So you're using a trailing stop loss. So once you identify a level where you want to put your trailing stop loss, do you, let's say, move it a couple of pips above or below just to give it a bit of breathing space for the bigger players, because they do like to take out some levels by just a few pips and then continue in the general direction? So what's your approach with trailing stop losses?
Yeah. So I'll show you just a quick visual example on my screen here. So
Sure.
the idea for a short trade for me, you guys know I use a mix of fundamentals and technicals. So I'm looking for, first and foremost, directional bias for me comes from the fundamentals. I mentioned that the Chinese, data has really pushed the markets lower for gold. That's been kind of my first catalyst. Then from the technical side, I look for very, very straightforward break and retests. Usually, all three of us, we tend to look for those big momentum pushes. So gold kind of served that push here recently. I sold it earlier this week, and then I sold it again after this big push retest on the lower time frames, and I went short. So that's kind of my entry. Very, very straightforward. What I'm looking for technically, usually what I'm looking for is to trail a stop after we put in sort of a confirmed lower high. But it's kind of loose. Like technicals for me are loose rules to follow, in the sense that, okay, so let's say I initially put my stop loss here, and the market makes a move here, and then it starts to put in this new lower high, and we start making moves move back. I won't always 100% of the time wait for a break through the lows, but usually that is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a break through the lows to kind of lock in this, and then I just rinse and repeat. Every time we get that new break of the lows, I'll do that. In this case today, I've been kind of watching this trend line, which Miko and I both addressed, this perfect little 1 hour kind of downtrend that has been going on. Just consistent lower highs are just so clean that if that structure breaks, I've actually used, in this case, instead of lower high concept, I'm just using the trend line as kind of my protective stop. If that breaks, then I think that the concept has a potential of no longer being in that momentum. So I'll probably pause. I want to ask you a question back, Marco. So we mentioned you were looking at the euro dollar here, and this candle here. You mentioned that some of your best trades they typically follow a major news announcement. Actually, for me as well, some of my favorite trades are aftermath news event setups. If this candle closes like this, like let's say that the candle looks exactly like this at the end of the 1 hour close, right? This is, of course, for viewers who are new, I'm looking at a 1 hour chart. This candle reflects 1 hour of price action. If this closes like this, do you still look for a bullish setup following that? Or do you look for a bearish setup? How do you kind of treat a news candle that has a big wick on it?
So it's more of a sign of a larger range if it has a huge wick on one side. So currently, if this candle closes like this, I would expect a larger range to happen. Most cases, this is what happens after this sort of a candle, but it's not a rule where it cannot continue trending. So if the next candle prints like this, which I have seen it price action do, and if it continues with the trend, I will look for a buy setup. So it's not just about how it closes, it's also what the next 2 to 3 hours of price action do for me personally. So it's even more important what the next few candles do than what the news candle does. But I do like a nice big news candle with a nice clean close. For example, let's say this was some sort of a news. This big candle, I do like to see it being as big as this. So it shows me some nice strength, some nice momentum, and big buyers stepping in.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Miko, I want to ask you the same question. Aftermath of news, do you take a lot of setups? And if so, I don't think any of us trade the spike of the actual news, but it does seem like those news spikes, those volatility spikes, can actually create setups. How do you treat it, Miko? Do you, like this afternoon, would this be kind of a time to look for opportunities for you following these moves that we're seeing?
I would have to agree that news does cause a lot of movement, so it gets the ball rolling a little bit. But with my trades, I try to just focus purely on the price action. But I have, like, when I back test, I can sometimes tell when a candle has just happened after news, because obviously maybe a big wick or something. And typically, when I do get entry candles after the news, it's either it's going to just fail or it's going to really get going in my favor. So I do like using the news to my advantage. Normally, how I go about it is, if I can find a trade, I find a trade. But I like to hold trades through news. So if I can get into the trades a day before, maybe a few hours before, that's good, and potentially news can get the ball rolling. But in terms of, like, for example, with news now, I don't necessarily look to see if there's a trade. I know what pairs I'm looking at, I know where I want price to come into. So it's not like I'm trying to look for something now, but if news happens, it maybe wicks price into my area of confluence, again, entry off the back of that, then I'm like, okay, maybe the news can really get going. Last week, I got into some shorts with pound USD, and kind of the same principle we're talking about right now. It was some shorts on pound USD off the back of CPI. We had this big wick to the upside, taking out some of these highs. So I did hop into a trade after that. It got to these lows, and eventually got taken out break even. But I was hoping that that news after CPI was going to give us a lot more downside. Obviously, in this case, it didn't. But that kind of CPI taking price to the upside, maybe taking out some traders earlier on, did kind of play in my mind, and did kind of give me the idea that, okay, maybe you can see a lot more momentum. But the key thing is always just making sure the setup fits my plan, and that's the most important thing.
Don't forget to check out the links in the description if you want our broker recommendation, access to our free Discord, free EDGEFINDER, or want to chat with us on Telegram. Remember, you can watch us live in the markets every morning starting at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and we have lots more free trading tools and content available on our website, a1trading.com. Thanks for watching.